There are a lot of different types of growing mediums you can put your plants in to help them grow, and plenty of other tools and amendments you can use to get them off to the right start. From different types of soils to fertilizers, various size pots, and more, the list of choices when it comes to what to include in your garden can be confusing. If you're new to gardening, there are two simple words that you should remember: Coco coir. Although the phrase likely isn't familiar to the average beginner gardener, it should be at the top of your shopping list as you prepare for your upcoming growing season. A boon to any garden or gardener, Coco coir is a growing medium that you definitely need to consider. It pays to know a little bit more about Coco coir and how to use it, and this complete guide to growing in Coco coir will tell you everything you need to know to get started. Let's check it out. So you may ask, what exactly is cocoa? Cocoa is the material that you might expect, given its name, to come from coconuts, and it does. This material is made out of coconut fibers. It is created when old coconut shells are cured for 1 week. After the curing process, steel combs are ran over the coconut to remove the fibers, and then the fibers are then dried out. Finally, the cocoa is molded into bricks, pots, or simply crushed and sold as loose mulch. What plants can you grow in coconut fiber, you may ask? You can grow just about any plant in cocoa, as the material acts just like any other soil or peat moss. There aren't too many plants that won't benefit from being planted into cocoa as long as you know what you're doing and the unique properties of the cocoa. You can use cocoa to grow everything from exotic plants to even more common plants and flowers. It's almost always required for use in hydroponics. Typically, you'll have to just mix some soil in with it and you'll reap all the benefits. So what exactly are the benefits of growing in cocoa? If you mix your cocoa with regular potting soil, you'll be able to help supercharge your plant's growth. Cocoa can easily retain water as well, plus the pH level is just about neutral compared to other acidic options like peat moss. It is also a renewable resource and will biodegrade over time easily and can be used as a neutral mulch in your garden. The cocoa's ability to hold water for an extended period of time makes it so that you won't have to water your plants quite as often. The plant roots will be able to grow and expand because cocoa has reliable aeration and drainage. When mixed with neutral soil, you'll be giving your plants everything you need to focus on growing, which means more flowers, more fruits, and bigger harvest for you. So some people may ask, is cocoa better than soil? This question comes up a lot in the gardening circles. And the answer is, it varies. For the best result, you should mix cocoa and potting soil to find a perfect balance. But if you're growing solely in cocoa, there are a few times when it can be better than soil. The increased aeration towards the roots can increase your yield, and the water retention properties will keep your soil moist for longer. If you are working with hydroponic farming, then you almost always have to use cocoa. The cocoa's nutrients will benefit your plants, and the superior water retention properties will help keep your plants wet and growing. Plus, cocoa is environmentally friendly and reusable. You can get multiple generations of plants from a single hydroponic station with Coco coir. Let's go ahead and talk about the different types of cocoa, because cocoa comes in various forms, and while they might all be made from the same material, they each have their pros and cons. The different types of cocoa are compressed bricks, molded pots, and cocoa peat. If you've been a gardener for a length of time, you've probably seen starters and other products made with soil marketed in the same form. Cocoa peat is without a doubt the most common and easiest type to buy. It's a simple peat that you can mix in with your soil, and it gives all the Coco coir benefits. You'll get the aeration, moisture retention, drainage benefits, along with the benefits of regular soil. Just make sure that you know what you're doing, as having the wrong balance of soil to peat can cause problems for your plant. Compressed cocoa bricks place cocoa fibers and dust into shaped bricks. Unlike peat or molded cocoa pots, these bricks require an extra step before they can be handled and set in your garden. You will need to soak them in water to make them expand, and most bricks can absorb up to 9 times their weight in water. Once they've been thoroughly soaked, you'll be able to use the mixture for your garden without any more delays. This is an incredibly efficient form of cocoa as a result. Finally, molded pots take coco coir fibers and shape them into the shape of a flower pot. You will simply place your plant into the pot, and then you put your pot into the ground, and over time the pot will degrade and you're left with coco coir enriched soil. So as we talked about the water retention and the aeration in coco coir, now the question comes up, do we have to water cocoa every day? For the most part, the answer is no, but this would lead to overwatering if you did that. However, nothing is concrete because every grow is different. If your grow room or grow tent is especially hot or has tons of airflow, especially common with growing outdoors, you may need to water more frequently. In some cases, water back-to-back days. However, it's easy to overwater your cocoa, which will stop aeration from becoming effective. Once the cocoa is watered, take some in between your hands and squeeze it. The water should disappear between your fingers but shouldn't run out. If the water runs out, you'll need to dry it out. If no water appears, then you should keep watering. Let's go ahead and talk about feeding with cocoa. Since cocoa has a very low EC, essentially no charge at all, this means you're in complete control of what your plant gets fed, which is a huge responsibility. Most potting soils contain low levels of nutrients to nourish your plants for the first few weeks of growing. However, in cocoa, you need to start feeding right away. Your specific nutrient package will have a feeding chart to help you determine how to feed your plants, and most of them will have different versions for whether you grow in soil or cocoa. But the big takeaway here is that you need to learn about the relationships between plant nutrients and pH, how to test for these two important components of your grow. There may be a learning curve. You may underfeed or overfeed for a while until you get the hang of it, but that's what growing's all about, right? When it comes to flushing cocoa, the rule of thumb is about every 4 to 6 weeks you would need to flush in order to alleviate any toxic buildups. Now this comes with a lot of synthetic nutrients. Organic nutrients don't have very much acidic properties at all. But the rule of thumb is every 4 to 6 weeks you should flush your cocoa. That way you do not have excess buildup that could damage your plant. Now we all know that cocoa is very eco-friendly and reusable. So let's talk about how we can reuse our cocoa. Cocoa is a renewable and reusable source, meaning that you can reuse old cocoa coir once the current batch of plants has been harvested and removed. It must be processed and cleaned before you can reuse it, but don't worry, it's easier than it sounds. First, you'll need to gather up all the cocoa and remove any roots or plant matter from it. Get rid of as much as you can by hand because it will allow the new roots to have room to grow. Once the soil is clean, you'll need to wash it with distilled water. This will flush out any other roots or salts that are still in the soil, as having too much salt can be toxic for your plant. The smaller roots that you can't see will also be fighting for space inside the cocoa, stopping your plant's growth. For an added layer of effect, you need to use enzymes to help break down any excess roots that are too small to be removed. Then the cocoa is ready to be used again. You can use your cocoa 2 or 3 times before you need to get a whole new batch. The reason cocoa can be easily reused is the lignin structure. The lignin makes the plant cells in cocoa rigid and allows for reusability. So what is Rob's final thoughts on cocoa? My final thoughts is that this is a whole new ball game. Going from soil to hydroponics is a very big change, and doing your research before you get started is what's going to help you be successful. We all know that pre-amended soils do have a lot of nutrients in it, and the hardest thing to do is determine when to start feeding them and when the nutrients that are in the soil are depleted. Growing with hydroponics should alleviate any confusion, and in the near future, we will be doing a hydroponics grow. And I will simplify it as much as possible for you so we can have great success. So we'll see you on that next video.